Can you believe it's been literal years since Wizard of Legend 1 released? Way back in 2018, you all got introduced to an isometric roguelite game where you put together a powerful wizard to take out different kinds of elemental levels. And finally, after all this time, Wizard of Legend 2 is now out in early access. We're actually being sponsored by the folks over at Humble Games in order to bring you a series of guides and videos for the early access of Wizard of Legend 2. I can tell you, I already have a ton of hours in this game, as well as multiple runs completed, all to get every bit of information I can gather to bring to you, the viewer. So if you're a big fan of action roguelikes, if you like Wizard of Legend, or if you just want to cosplay as some kind of magic slinging wizard, I think this is the video you want to see. And by the end of this, you'll have everything you need to know to start your journey in Wizard of Legend 2.
Just keep your focus. The Arcana will...
Hey, couldn't resist seeing you in action.
Alethea, you shouldn't interrupt.
All right, I'm out.
So as I said earlier, this is an action roguelike. This is not a deck builder, this is not turn-based gameplay. It's you in an isometric field versus monsters, and many times multiple monsters at a time, all of which are shooting you, slashing at you, dashing at you. There's pitfalls on the screen, spikes, poison, and your job is to, for lack of a better term, blow up, zap, or punch any monster that's in your way in order to get to the end and become the new Wizard of Legend. What's going to be required for you to do that is the mechanics to dodge around attacks, layer different kinds of spells in order to get stuns or knockups, burn enemies, freeze enemies, perform combos to punch them into walls or punch them off of platforms, dodge properly, utilize iframes in order to avoid damage, learn boss patterns, and of course, put together a build based on relics and spells that lead you to become the strongest wizard you can be. In the current version of Early Access, there are over 40 different spells that you can choose from, as well as tons of relics that'll augment your build, and a couple of other things that we'll get to further in the video. And of course, I should say that co-op is available in Early Access with 2-player co-op. Before you start any run, our main hub has multiple things to look out for. First off, you have your wardrobe where you can customize your cloak. But now in Wizard of Legend 2, we have individual cloak styles. There's cloak colors that you can choose from, different symbols that you can put on the back of your cloak, and then there's even some headgear options, a few masks that you can collect, which are, I think, from some of the elemental enemies from the game. Unlike Wizard of Legend 1, these cloaks do not have special abilities, and that's because the abilities are now part of a medallion system. The medallion actually goes on the front of your character, has different shapes and different effects. So you have things like signature gain is increased, healing is increased with a critical chance to heal, and even the fan favorite evasion chance and crit chance. So now you can use any kind of drip you want, and then also be able to put any equipment that you want on it and make kind of like your own custom setup without having to stick to just one color. And of course, many of these are unlocked with a currency called soul gems. These crystals are used for just about everything in the game. But one thing that's new to Wizard of Legend 2 are pseudo quests that will give you currency for completing it. And it's simple things such as defeat 50 enemies with explosive hazards, freeze 7 enemies in a single ice blast, or burn 100 enemies to death. And upon doing that, you would get gems beyond what you would typically find in a normal run. As you see, in the amount of time that I've played, I've done a decent number of tasks, which have all given me soul gems. So I've been able to do a decent number of spell unlocks that we'll get to in just a second.
Magic relics are more than tools.
The relics make a return in this game, and you can choose starting relics on each individual run out of, I dare say, all the common relics in the game. These you can unlock with Chaos Gems. The game presents you with 5 that you can choose from. You buy one, and then a new relic is rotated in. From there, you get to choose any starting relic that you have for any run that you want. They have a lot of the themed stuff, such as increase all your lightning damage. All of your dragons do increased damage. or increase your basic Arcana damage. However, sometimes I'll get things for survivability, such as Berserker King Sandwich, which lets you get a little bit of your health back by attacking an enemy after you take damage. So with the cloak and the medallion and the relic, you can try to fit together a starting build that is either like based on a specific element or based on specific gameplay that you know is going to help you reach the end. But I'm sure for you all, the most important part is unlocking new spells with the gems.
That if you're not hungry for a challenge, you're not prepared to grow stronger.
Surgic is in charge of selling us all of the spells that we have available. Again, there's a choice of 5 on the screen. Buying one will rotate in the next spell for you to purchase. Everything is in here, from basic Arcana to signature, and every element is in here too. With the Arcana you've unlocked, you can use the book that's next to Surgic in order to set your starting Arcana for every single run that you do. Honestly, I just take whatever sounds fun. I'm not going for any specific element. You can even test out your spells in the hub area. I have a bunch of training dummies, so you can see my earth setup, my fire setup, my water setup, my thunder setup, and of course my wind setup. However, that's not the only thing you can augment for your runs. In Wizard of Legend 2, you can augment the runs themselves with Nazradine. This is basically like a difficulty system. It starts off at Apprentice, which allows you to add positive runes that you will unlock, and you can fill in different kinds of elements that will actually help you with your gameplay. Simple things like bonus health, shop discounts, or even extra dashes before you hit a pitfall. Funny enough, these can also be leveled up by spending the same currency that uses to unlock them. And as you increase the difficulty, you start adding in these red sockets at the bottom of the screen. The green sockets are for each of your positive effects. The red ones are actually for the negative effects. And adding more will actually increase the amount of chaos gems that you get per run. Currently, I'm running Danger Zone that increases the amount of damage you take from traps. And once I'm ready to increase the difficulty from Adept up to Elementalist, I'll be adding Fortified Foes, which gives all of the enemies a fortifying shield, requiring me to do even more damage than before. So with all of that, we haven't even actually gotten into a run yet. I'm sure this is your favorite part of the vid. So if you like to see more things like this, I encourage you to like the video and subscribe for all of the next Wizard of Legend stuff that we're gonna have on this channel. But let's go ahead and start talking about the run itself. So the way a Wizard of Legend run works is that you start off in the area known as the woods. Unlike other roguelikes where you have to choose paths and try to figure out which path gives you the right reward, in this game you have a specific, almost a dungeon that you're going to be going through, and the dungeon is set up within multiple stages. You have the starter stage, then you have stage 2, which has lots of different challenges in it, and then you'll have a mini boss fight. But let's go ahead and talk about the actual stages first. So as you go through the game, you'll be plowing through the first enemies. Most of them aren't terribly difficult, but as you're still learning the game, I will definitely say you will be taking some damage. Don't let it discourage you too much, because this is what I would consider a pretty difficult game to pick up, but it's really fun once you begin to master the different kind of mechanics that are being shown to you. There's hazards on the screen, chasms that you have to dash over, lots of enemies to dodge because each one is trying to attack you during combat. There's not a lot of downtime in Wizard of Legend 2, as a matter of fact. You'll find pots that you can break, flowers that act as bombs and that will explode, different kinds of objectives on the map.
I'm betting you can handle this. Prove me right.
Such as this wizard who wants us to kill all the enemies within 20 seconds. Hopefully not too difficult if I utilize the flower in the center. Luckily, Wind does a great job of pulling enemies together. Unfortunately, I lost it by like 1 second. Combat in the game is really responsive, and I think the most important part about Wizard of Legend 2 is that each attack that you have has a stun state to it. You need to really know which attacks in your kit are going to allow you to deal damage to the enemy without them doing some kind of attack against you. For example, in this Wind setup, when I pull all enemies together, I could still take a hit from like a ranged monster. However, once I start doing the tornado spin and drag the monsters, they can't really do the same thing against me. In fact, I would say that the combat in this game is some of the most interesting I've dealt with, because it does actually require you to hit every button in your arsenal, unless you get a specific build that allows you to spam one button for maximum damage. This is really like a combo focused game. I can't simply spam my attack button because monsters will attack me while I'm doing so. There are some attacks that can do that, such as the Earth Fist. However, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to layer different kinds of spells in order to get the maximum DPS that I can, which a lot of you all from Wizard of Legend 1 will remember that layering attacks is better than trying to spam just one attack. As I said, there are objectives on the map, random wizards, a pinata, which is like a DPS check, and even chaos gates, where you jump into a portal, do some kind of challenge, and then you'll get a reward from there. We'll talk about that in just a bit. One of the reward types that you'll find in a run or from a shop are relics. Relics, of course, give different kinds of effects, some of which are defensive, some of which are offensive, and some of which augment specific elements in the game. For example, in this relic altar, I have the choice between avoiding some fatal damage, damage reduction, or damage against staggered enemies. But there's actually a lot of different effects in the game that also interact with your builds. For example, if you send wind through burning enemies, you'll send out fireballs on the opposite side. You might be able to get bonus damage from slamming down a knocked up foe, or you may have a shock effect that will zap enemies once the shock ends. I'd say the relics are probably one of the most important aspects of actually getting through a run of this game with a win, but it's not the only piece, because there's a bit more that you have to do involving the actual spells that you've collected, and that could be the most fun part of the game itself. You may even find different ways to give special affixes to your spells. For example, my first choice has damage against inflicted enemies, cooldown reduction on my whirlwind, or cooldown reduction on my signature Zephyr Whirl. All of these are really good because getting cooldown reduction on these spells lets me do more slow, more crowd control. However, getting the bonus on my afflicted enemies, that counts on the slow that comes from Zephyr Whirl. Eventually, you'll stumble upon spell augments. These, I think, are actually leveling up the spell and turning it into something completely different. This is where the game gets particularly interesting, because not only do you have one spell, but that spell can branch off into different kinds of spells beyond what it could do normally. Oftentimes, this power-up is what actually defines what the build is going to be. I could be adding shock or adding burn. I could be changing from one single attack to two. This is where experimentation is key, because sometimes you actually don't know how good a spell is until it is changed into its next level.
Frenzied Knuckles is a great enhancement selection. Now you'll cast that Arcana faster, meaning your enemies won't know what hit them.
And then finally, in a run, you'll be finding Chaos Gates, as I said before, which gives you Chaos Relics. The Chaos Relics have some kind of detriment and some kind of positive benefit. For the most part, the benefits are actually extremely powerful. Some of them are incremental, such as reduce the damage on your basic attack, but increase the damage on your signature spell. But then you sometimes get really weird ones that'll pop up. These might be completely game defining, in which your entire build is based on the fact that you got a Chaos Relic. If you manage to put a good enough set of equipment together, you're able to get to the first elemental boss. Each biome, which is of course split between two different stages, has one elemental boss and one main boss. The elemental one is randomized. So far in early access, I've seen earth, water, and thunder. Funny enough, in the demo version, these were a bit more serious than they are now, and thanks to the community, they brought back the puns that you can expect from Wizard of Legend 1, where they'll talk about rain, or they'll talk about earth, or they'll talk about thunder.
This victory is only the beginning. Remember, the snow melt brings the flood.
The elemental bosses are actually pretty strong. One feature in Wizard of Legend 2 is this poise meter. As you start to build up stagger damage on each individual enemy, they will get stunned, which I think might even reduce their defenses. That I'll have to double check on. But this allows you to put out your entire kit before they recover and try to start attacking you again. There's no more of that dodge revolution into a cooldown phase where you get to do free damage. Now you need to be doing damage the entire time until you break that poise meter, and that's the only break that you get. I actually really like this system because it proves my prowess with my build, and also means that any ability that I get that gives you crowd control or iframes become even stronger on bosses compared to how strong they are in the biome. If you're able to get through the elemental boss, you're rewarded with one of those spell augments. Choose wisely because the next stage leading into the biomes boss is going to be much harder than you had before. We'll be doing the same thing, however, progressing through the map, killing enemies as we can, completing challenges such as the Chaos Gates, or even stumbling across some of these tournaments that are run by Surgic, and trying to continue to further our build until we get to the true main boss of the biome. The first biome's boss is Bahadur. This is much different than Wizard of Legend 1, where there's a boss specific to the biome, and these are actually really difficult. It's almost like a raid boss in an MMO. You're trying to dodge around multiple AoE attacks, slam attacks, building up that poise meter, as I said before. However, I'm not waiting for some kind of like cooldown phase. I'm actually doing damage as often as possible. And once I break that meter, then I can go ham on the monster itself. If you thought the game might have been too easy, this is where some of your first deaths are probably going to happen if they aren't happening to the elemental. Now, if you're able to get through Bahadur, you're going to go into the second biome for early access. This is a desert biome full of land sharks, worms that spit at you, mummies, and all kinds of dangerous monsters that honestly can kill you in their own right. This is where the game really starts to test your ability to press every button on your controller, because if you're sitting there and waiting for your best skill to come off cooldown, there's lots of chances to get hit by every single enemy on the screen. By now, you've hopefully collected different kinds of enhancements, which are the affixes on your spell. They may have gotten multiple levels on spells. In some cases, you'll even find a spell in the shop that's already leveled up. For example, this lifting wind here, even though it's $200, it's already leveled up past what a normal lifting wind does. Once you get through the first stage, you will have to fight against another elemental enemy. This is going to be just as bad as the first one that you've seen, though perhaps your build is a little bit stronger now. As I said, I've played this game a lot, and I never think that any of these bosses are going to be a cakewalk. Even for the elementals, though I know most of their moveset, I still die to these things. Once you get through the elemental, you'll be on Act 2. Act 2 is almost like inside of the desert biome. You have both an outdoor area and an indoor area, lots of spike traps, lots of projectile traps that shoot things at you, mummy enemies, the whole 9 yards is in here. Once you're able to get through all of these, you'll make it to the final boss of early access. This is Jabara, sort of like a desert witch or something, really sand-based, lots of wind-based attacks. There's a lot going on this one. Again, this is a biome boss that's not an elemental, so you could expect to see this in each of your attempts if you're able to make it thus far. Not only does this boss fire out homing missiles and has laser line attacks, but there's also a lot of pitfalls on the screen that it generates. So there's a lot of action on the screen beyond what you would typically have on a normal boss fight. If you're able to get through that, you have completed early access for Wizard of Legend 2. Trust me, it took me multiple runs to even get this far. Lots of unlocks, and it's not even all I can do in the game. Because remember, we have an NPC that will actually add challenge to the game, which gives us bonus chaos gems, which allows us to unlock more stuff. Now, my goal here was really just an intro to Wizard of Legend 2. We're gonna have multiple videos in line beyond this one. We haven't talked about different kinds of elemental builds. We haven't talked about how elements interact with other ones. Even once you start playing in co-op, where one player might be using freeze to lock enemies in place and the other one might be using fire to start burning enemies, you'll have different kinds of synergy you can put together that I can't even show in this one video without it going longer than what I expected. But as I said, Wizard of Legend 2 is out now in early access. You can play it just like I am. If you want to know more about the game, the link to the Steam store page is in the description of this video. Take a look at it. Give the wishlist too. Devs love it when you wishlist their game and it helps out with the algorithm. Speaking of algorithms, you can also like this video and leave a comment letting me know which element you find to be your favorite, or if you don't have the game and you saw my gameplay, which one looked the fanciest and might be the first one you try out. Either way, thanks for checking out this deep dive of Wizard of Legend. I have more videos in line, so I hope to see you on those as well.